Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Iron Canon podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. And especially a happy 501st day to all our friends in the Legion, especially the Brazilian. How I roll. My name is Matthew, and I'm joined by Joel across the continent. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great.
Right on, right on. Season 3 of The Mandalorian. I thought it was incredible. Did it have room for improvement? Maybe. We give our classic Iron Canon bird's eye perspective on the latest adventures of Din Djarin, Bo-Katan Kryse, the armor, and above all, the latest Mandalorian apprentice, Din Grogu. Yes, spoilers will abound. To help us out, as you can see on the screens there, we got the Star Wars Underworld everything guy, the guy who made up the name for the Iron Canon podcast. It's Mr. Dominic Jones. Tom, how you doing?
It's good to be here. I'm excited to look back and take a not a bird's eye view, but a dragon eye view of this season.
A mythosaur eye view.
A mythosaur eye view. I was thinking of that like creepy like dragon thing that stole the kid in that one episode.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, there we go. I was thinking of the one that Daenerys Targaryen just flies into.
I mean, that one too. That one.
There you go. No, I actually love the season. Don't want to burn it down. Just get the plugs out of the way. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at IronCanonPod, EYEONCANONPOD. Joel, I know you got a lot of conversations going on there on Twitter. Tractor Beam. Again, still trying to sort out what I want to do with that. So, appointment podcasting on my own, audio only. We'll see what ideas pop up. Gonna maybe do the old brainstorm noggin, see what helps there. Joel, you want to talk about Discord, YouTube memberships, all that stuff?
Yes. Of course, as always, you can continue the conversation and join us on the Star Wars Underworld Discord, where this Friday we will be hosting a game night. We are going to do Fortnite because it is will be on May the 5th. From 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and we will be having, the button. You won't be getting a button, sadly, but you can try and get the Chosen One skins himself as we play Fortnite. So rank up those points. Again, Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern.
Tom, what are you doing?
I've got a Star Wars Underworld button.
Okay.
I'm trying to hold it somewhere where it wasn't reflecting light.
Yeah. All right.
Does it really work so much?
Nope.
Over here.
There, that's better.
There we go.
That's
there we go. There we go.
If
you don't know what the Star Wars Underworld logo looks like, you're on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel and Facebook page, and
don't forget the YouTube memberships.
I can hold up a trading card too.
Nice. Yeah.
He's got merch. We got merch apparently.
We also have the kind of merch you can only get if you find me specifically at a convention. So
that's true. Or at a movie somewhere.
That too.
There we go. So on the Underworld YouTube channel, we got YouTube memberships and super chats. So we'll try to get to every comment we can, but if you give us a super chat, we will definitely get to your comment as soon as possible. All right. Without further ado, let's dive in this week in Star Wars. And Dom, when you were talking about this, we were talking about some other stuff. And you're like, you want to gush over some High Republic story that you're currently listening to. I don't know if you finished it.
I finished it. Yeah,
I finished it. Yay. Let us know, George Mann's The Battle of Jeddah. What did you think?
Oh my God. Yeah, I finished The Battle of Jeddah. I listened to it over about 3 or 4 days. And I'd been looking forward to this, even though I didn't really know what to expect all that much from it. The title, The Battle of Jeddah, was so exciting. And right away you're introduced to a great sort of set of characters, some of which were in the books previously, some of which are new to this story. And it's a rollicking adventure. It's a tragedy because everything goes wrong in it, I think it's safe to say. And yet there's so much there's still like a thread of optimism through it, despite the fact that there's at least 2 devastating character deaths. And one of them in particular, I don't listen to a ton of audio dramas, but I don't know if I've quite been moved by an audio drama in the same way as when a certain character met their end and another character's reaction to it. I'm trying to be vague, trying not to spoil it.
Yeah.
But it's towards the end, and I was sort of thinking like, oh, it's an audio drama. Some of these action scenes are a little bit odd because you're hearing somebody go wah, wah, and then there's the boom boom pew pew, and just like you're listening to it, you can't really picture what's going on, and then all of a sudden something happens, and you're like, oh, tragedy has struck. So yeah, I'm in the middle of one of my High Republic binges right now. I've just started Convergence.
You listened to Battle of Jeddah before reading Convergence. All right.
Yeah, that's
good.
what Reddit told me to do.
Oh,
Really?
I think Reddit's wrong then. Reddit's very wrong.
Wait,
Don't
which is
do
the
that.
one?
Convergence or Cataclysm?
That one, second one.
Okay,
Cataclysm. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, because I read Convergence a while back.
Yes.
okay.
And I loved that one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've all caught up on the comics, and so now I'm reading the book.
There we go.
I've also got Quest for Planet X lined up after that to sort of round out phase 2, leading into, I guess, Path of Deceit, Path of Vengeance, which comes out tomorrow, doesn't it?
Tomorrow.
So, yeah. So it's been good. But yeah, the High Republic Battle of Jeddah, that was terrific, and it was kind of different from the last couple of Star Wars audio dramas, which have been really centered around one character. Dooku, which was really more of an adventure story. Afra, and even Tempest Runner, the last High Republic one, was really about Lorna D. This one really was like just an ensemble cast. You could maybe make the case. I think Master Sun is kind of a main character. Salandra's kind of a main character. Keth is kind of a main character, but we could just list off all these people who are kind of main characters in it. So I think it's a true ensemble, and you're not getting anybody's thoughts unless they say them out loud, which is again different from the previous Star Wars ones, which have all had kind of a narrator character through them. Which I actually kind of like that better this time. The other ones felt like a little bit of a cheat. Felt like we were reading, just having an audio book with multiple actors. This one felt like a true radio play of old.
Yeah, especially the ensemble cast really brings that out. And I mean, George Mann and the cast and the production and everything did a really great job of making us feel like we knew what was going on. We could actually tell the difference between different characters, follow what was going on. The tragedy. You hope at the end of Convergence, you hope for some this peaceful resolution between Aram and Arano. You kind of know it won't, but to see it fall apart.
Well, when I was reading Cataclysm,
Convergence.
Why are they both start with a C?
It's meant to be. That's the intentional symmetry.
Yeah.
Path of Deceit, Path of Vengeance, Cataclysm, Convergence. Yeah.
It's confusing, is what it is. Star Wars: The High Republic confusing is phase 2. But reading the first one, I was sort of thrown a little bit by the timeline, because I remember in Into the Dark, I think there's a whole backstory. There's a whole subplot that takes place in flashbacks that involves Iram and Irano, and I guess is set after the time of Ziri and
100 years after.
Yeah, that's after Ziri and Fantu's end. And so I was sort of like, oh, so things don't get better from this. I mean, maybe a little bit better. They're not in an active hot war, but it still doesn't, the optimism that you're meant to feel at the end of that book, even at the end of that book, without guessing at what happens in Battle of Jeddah or beyond, you kind of know, it's not going to be what we hope it is, because we know from the subsequent adventure that came out first, because it's Star Wars.
Yeah, true. That's a flashback of I forget who, not Canton Sai. So they're masters by the time of phase 1. So maybe 30 years before their Padawans trapped. Yeah, it's a similar kind of star-crossed thing happening a little bit with at least it's a friendship in that case. But the Forever War is Forever War. No.
I do wonder if they're still at war even up to New Hope times. That's a good question.
I don't know what you think about this, Matthew, but I feel like phase 3, when that starts coming out later this year, I feel like we're going to see some of these plot lines from phase 2 that take place well before phase 1. We're going to kind of fast forward with them up until the phase 3 timeline, and we'll get kind of a picture of Iram and Arano in the High Republic timeline proper. I feel like that's gotta happen. Why else are we spending so much time there? Besides from the fact that it's been some pretty good stories there.
I remember during our discussion on it, I was joking. It's like, well, eventually they're gonna have to stop fighting, because their petty little war is not gonna mean much when the Empire's showing up, and like they're still fighting. Palpatine's gonna be like, Yeah, no. Send in the Star Destroyers and like, hey, wait a minute, what about our war? Like, yeah, no. Blow him up, everybody.
I mean, this is the thing about the Empire, right? Is they would send in a whole bunch of troops and they would bring peace. It's just peace looks more like an occupation on both of those planets rather than one side winning or preferably both sides achieving some sort of peace. So there would probably be, and this goes back to what we would see in what we see in Bad Batch. The initial response to the stormtroopers showing up would probably be like, yeah, all right, peace in our time. I like this. And then they'd quickly realize, oh, no, bad.
Forget
Bad baby. Bad baby, no squeezy.
Yeah, but I'll be curious. Yeah, I'll be curious to see what Phase 3 wraps up. And we've talked about a lot about the ending of Phase 3, how that's going to all shake out and stuff like that. But go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, so a few notes there. One thing we know is, Joel, your point about the Empire being the Empire. One little hint of that is the Santa Star Wars comic, written by Justina Ireland. Bringing back Avon, of course, makes an appearance in that as kind of a flashback of her research. But I think she goes to Arano. And it looks like Lothal, actually, the architecture. It's just Imperial. It's just it's there, So that's a hint of an answer. We're spending all this time in Phase 2 really showing the origins of things to bring back even more so than obviously than the sequel trilogy did with the prequels. But to really, in a way, I mean, Phase 1 chronologically, but also then in terms of the overall story, really is just an intermediate point. It's really everything set up in Phase 2 that will come back in Phase 3, which, I mean, in terms of our experience going through it, not chronologically, in terms of release order, I find that more effective. I find it very effective. I don't know if people who read it in chronological order in 3-4 years, 10 years, what their experience will be.
I've seen in some fan spaces where people are discussing, should you read the High Republic Phase 2, Phase 1, Phase 3? Should you try and do it in chronological order? And I wonder what that would be like.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Path of Deceit, which is the first book of Phase 2, does an amazing job, I think, of convincing you that this is a worthwhile detour. Because it's such a good read, but it also lands so well because it tells you right away, we're going to explore some of those things we were perhaps spending too much time teasing in Phase 1. If I have a criticism of Phase 1, I think it spent a little too much time teasing stuff like the Nameless and never quite giving us, or never quite going into enough what was going on with Marchion Ro and the true goals of the Nile. I think there were a couple of points in Phase 1 where things were being a little bit too repetitive for my tastes. But so then it's like, okay, but we're not going to continue. We're going to end that story in a really sort of compelling place. Starlight Beacon has fallen. What do we do next? Going to end there. And then it's like, okay, instead of continuing that story, we're going to jump back 250 years and to tell a completely different one. And Path of Deceit opens up with no, we're going to continue exploring those things you were interested in just from a different vantage point. And everything that happens with Kevmo and Marta in that first book is it's so that's I think one of the great Star Wars YA novels, just full stop, regardless of the rest of the High Republic. So it just sort of worked as a good story to begin with, but it had this added layer of juiciness because of what we had learned in Phase 1.
Phase 3 will open up with everyone gathered, and they'll just say, somehow the mother has returned.
maybe. Well,
I love the mother, so I would be down for that.
Speaking of the guy who's the head honcho, this guy here, right here, great grandmother. I keep saying that she's Marta. She's the best character. I think she's probably the best character in all of High Republic. My favorite character in all of High Republic already. Path of the Open Hand is one of the most compelling. I mean, my guy Reith Silas, he's my favorite character, but Marta Ro definitely most compelling, just in that her innocence and her the way that innocence can get corrupted into a very dark place. Classic Star Wars theme. But also the Path of the Open Hand.
Kill ya.
And the way Justine Ireland, Tessa Gratton play with the path of the open hand and their idyllic, innocent way of life that is also incredibly dogmatic and my way or the highway. And what are you doing? You're not condescending to us. We're gonna turn into the Nile and wipe you out.
It's been great fun over phase 2 watching the path of the open hand evolve.
Yeah.
Because we've known from the beginning there's something sinister there. Something's going on there. They have the levelers and everything like and the nameless and so like we know something sinister is going on there, but they've been presenting as this friendly group that run around and hand out flowers and gifts freely given. It's all nice and well, and then you get into Battle of Jeddah and all of a sudden there's the Herald riling everybody up, and the comics play with that as well. And then you get into there's the Dark Horse miniseries that's ongoing right now, the Terror of the Nameless. They're the path of the open hand is just straight up villains in that, and that part of the path has always existed with Yana and everything, but now it seems all pretenses of gifts freely given have been dropped, and it's like, no, these guys are the baddies. But at that core you still have, like you were saying, the character Marta, who I think her motives are pure regardless of what that leads to and the actions that she takes because of them. I think she has a good heart, but it's one that's very corruptible and is being corrupted by the mother and other characters. And again, it makes Yana an interesting character because she might be the one that could pull her out of it. Again, I'm a book behind. I'm a book or two behind, depending on how you look at these things.
You're ahead of me. I'll put that way.
Okay, so
believe it or not.
oh wow. Okay, so we might not. I might be.
I'm more caught up with High Republic than you, Matthew, at this point.
Yep.
Oh wow.
I've been reading Battle Scars. I'm trying to finish that book.
So have you not read Confusing?
I read Convergence.
I read Confusing.
What about Cataclysm?
I have not read Cataclysm.
Okay. I'm reading Cataclysm.
I'm halfway through chapter 1. I started reading it and realized, God, she writes long chapters. I'm gonna have to break these up.
I'm on chapter 16.
Nice.
So I'm winning.
Lots to talk about with that. We will have a full-on, like we did last time, phase 2 recap show. Hopefully, maybe it'll go 3 hours. I have no idea. And whenever it happens, whenever we all catch up and finish everything, we'll definitely get into that. But
in all seriousness, if the mother does show up in phase 3, I'm down. She's my favorite character. I love the mother.
I heard something about. Oh no, I guess that's the young adult anthology that's in between. Okay, that's fair. All right. Let's move on for now, but definitely great discussion. Always love talking about here on the home for the High Republic on the Underworld Podcast Network. I'm just claiming that. Joel, you have a theory.
I have a theory. I got a theory. Snips. Yep, I got a theory about the Ahsoka show. For my week of Star Wars, also part of my week, I got the timeline book right there. Nice. Yay! Nice. But my theory about the two Darksider looking fellas, Balon and Shin. By the way, they look cool. Look the beard and Shin, she's looking epic. But I have my theory that they don't consider themselves Dark Jedi or Sith. I think they see themselves as Jedi who use the dark side. And the reason I think this is I think what Thrawn wants to do is he wants to restore the Empire, but he also wants to create a new Jedi Order that will be loyal to the Empire. After all, they are called Jedi Knights. Knights are all about service to your lord and liege. They're not Sith lords, if you all know. Sith, they lord over others. That is their thing. They lord. Vader lords. Palpatine lord. But Sith, they are knights. Thus, they are servants in the ancient Western tradition of the Nine Round Table. And obviously, who can be their liege but Mr. Thrawn himself. So I think Thrawn, what he wants to do is he wants to recreate the Empire, no order, stability, but he also wants like a strong, force-sensitive contingent behind it, because he saw that as a strength of the Republic, and he's like, well, what if we were the world where the Jedi swore their allegiance to the Empire, or a Empire, not just some Republic? Which is funny enough, because that was actually how it was going to go down in George's older draft, where it was just going to be an empire that just got evil emperors all of a sudden. In the classical samurai Japan sense. So that is my theory as to why these two might be helping out Thrawn, his forces, that they're all part of Thrawn's plan to both restore the Empire, but also bring a new Jedi Order to serve it. And if that is the case, then that proves that Thrawn is not working for Palpatine because there's no way Palpatine's gonna let that happen. It's like no. But that is my theory as to why maybe these two Darksiders might be serving Mr. Thrawn.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory. I have no idea if it's going to come to pass, but theory. I mean, it feels very Legends, right? How further on, I think in the is this a new Jedi Order? Not necessarily new Jedi Order, but there were these empires that had this sort of quasi Jedi thing going on a couple decades after, or 50 years.
Imperial Knights.
Yeah, Imperial Knights, and how Knight. I mean, we don't think of it, but Knights serving the Republic. Well, why not just serve the Empire? Especially if the heir to the Empire isn't a Sith, has no blue skin in the Jedi Sith game. See what I did there? Yeah, it's intriguing. And then of course Ahsoka is not going to have any of it. But yeah.
She'd be like, no, Thrawn, you can't do that, and we're gonna whoop your butt.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, at least in terms of their own understanding of what they're doing, right? The Force is going to have other ideas, but yeah, I don't know. Dom, what do you think of that idea, that theory?
I like the idea of Thrawn sort of saying like, I need my answer to the Jedi, because Ahsoka's out there, Luke's out there. You don't know who else might be being trained at this time period. And it would be something you would want just in case some kind of secret Jedi Order was being created. It makes a lot of sense. I'd kind of like to see these guys move beyond the concept of Jedi or Sith. Let them be their own thing, and have their own motives and their own goals for the Force and the galaxy, not unlike what we see in the High Republic with everything on Jedi and the path of the open hand. So I'd like to see them kind of even move away from that specific binary of Jedi Sith and go to something else, and they'll have their own reason for allying with Thrawn and the Empire, or the Remnant Empire. And in a classic dark side Empire fashion, maybe they'll be working against each other while also working together. They'll secretly be undermining each other. I think that would make for a compelling story to go along with the specific Ahsoka, Ezra, Sabine, Thrawn, Hera adventure that we're getting.
You bring up undermining, and I want to bring up 2 points. One, someone mentioned that Shin, the woman, she had like a Jedi braid if you look hard enough. So that might be a clue. But speaking of undermining each other, we know that there are other Imperial factions out there. Obviously, it's not they're the Shadow Council, but they're not like one force. Well, they're coordinating, but they're not one force. So I do wonder if it's not just internal backstabbing, but almost external, where it's like Talion and Hux are talking to one another, but we know where Hux's faction is going to lead to eventually. So maybe there's going to be like, yes, Thrawn, we're all behind you, and then Hux is like turning around, it's like there's old bony Snoke saying, just keep playing along, play the fiddle, and we'll get rid of Thrawn eventually. So then can be the top Imperial dogs that everyone has to follow. So I'll be curious if we see also though that external Imperial politicking between the Hux faction, the Hux Sloane Snoke faction, and the Thrawn faction, which I hope we see, because I love that stuff. That's my favorite kind of Imperial dark sidiness.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of another faction, the Knights of Ren, which, as we've seen in both screen and now in paper, they kind of have their own motivations for doing things.
That's true.
Sure, by the time with Snoke, they're fully under his thumb. But with here's a bit of a spoiler if you haven't read Hidden Empire. With Kira, we're just going to decide to do this thing that I won't spoil too much, but we're just up and do what we want here. So yeah, I mean, they've already, again, they're Sith-esque, especially under Ben, so under Kylo Ren. But yeah, they kind of do their own thing a little bit. I don't know. All right. One last little bit of this week. I finally got to start. As we all know, Jedi Survivor is out. I've been spoiled on a little bit of things because got some friends posting stuff and being excited and all that, whatever. But yeah, I've found a great playthrough that doesn't have any commentary on YouTube. So I'm just sitting watching it, and I know lots of folks. I know Anna and Tales Beyond the Galaxy She's been streaming it over on Twitch, and a bunch of her friends are streaming it. I think I don't know if Chris Starrupter has been streaming it, but he's definitely been playing it. And just I'll just say the first thing, it starts on Coruscant, and
I know, I feel good.
yeah, that's all that. I mean, it's the first first half hour. It's on Coruscant, and yet again, Coruscant having its time in the sun. Dom, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's some interesting locations. Locations.
It took me almost 4 years to finally watch a cinematic playthrough, whatever you want to call it, of Jedi Fallen Order.
All right.
So we'll get there.
You'll get there. You'll probably be spoiled on the story by then.
Yeah. I my intention is, once I finish this High Republic binge, to read Battle Scars and then watch the game after that. So give it a little bit of time. You can have all the stories sort of marinate. But I am excited. I do like Cal Kestis as a character, and I did really enjoy the story of the first one, even without controlling him and making him jump and making him go boom boom with his saber
without having to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll say the graphics and the visual looks even better. They definitely advanced it, which is saying something, because Fallen Order was looked fantastic. And then some things have been spoiled for me. I won't say them. Very much confirming my idea that video games are paper canon. They're in the paper canon continuity. They're indebted to all that, and so I won't say any more. But if you see some pretty excited cheering from some of our friends, you'll know why. There we go.
Oh, I already know. I mean, we all know. And if anything, I actually think it disproved it. I think it proved that video games are the transition. They are the next step, because
we'll get to what I mean when we were able to talk about the story. But yeah,
but
I mean, we could debate that. That's definitely a good point to debate and keep debating, keep discussing. But
I mean, I already know the whole story. I've seen it all.
Of Survivor.
Oh yeah, I know the whole thing.
All right. Okay, fair enough. I haven't gotten a chance. I've only watched maybe 2 hours of it.
I saw one thing that was 6 hours long, and I know that's like a shortened version of it that only shows you the key things. I'm like, oh, I know this is going to be good. I know this is going to be worth it, but God, that's a commitment.
Well, the one I found is 17 hours. I'm watching like a series.
I know.
Mandalorian's done, so we gotta have the next series.
I will say though, if you are someone who likes the idea of Star Wars being an interconnected universe of various eras, and it's all one thing, then this video game is very much for you.
Yeah,
cool.
That's great. That's great.
Exciting.
All right, we got a bit of film news notes here. Jump into that, and it's Canadian content here. Shireen Obey Chinoy.
That's what that means.
Pardon? That's what that means. Yeah. She's she grew up in Pakistan, I believe, and spent a lot of time in the U.S. But she moved to Toronto. She moved here. So, and she claims she's Canadian.
It's the continued Toronto takeover of Star Wars. Started with Hayden, continued with Deborah Chow. Now on to Sharmina.
Don't forget Paul Sun-Young Lee.
Paul Sun-Young Lee, can't forget him too. Yeah,
there we go.
That is true.
Yeah, and so
when the Leafs win the Stanley Cup, there will be a big party at Lucasfilm headquarters.
There we go. Here, we'll see. So yeah, anyway,
I didn't say it would be this year. I didn't say it would be this year.
Anyway, so I think Ben might have posted this on the flagship Twitter account, which if you're watching,
I found it first.
Joel, you found it first. Okay, fair enough. That it's announced that her film, the Rey, I believe it's the
New Jedi Order,
the Rey New Jedi Order film, the next Star Wars film. So likely 2025. Which is, I don't know if that's supposed to be surprising or not. I guess we thought maybe the Filoni film would be, or the Mangold film would be, and I know there's complications with all those. But yeah, date is still, of course, to be determined. I'm still holding on to the Rayside rule. Let's see if she's still in the chat here. Holding on to the Rayside rule about Star Wars films, but I mean, like I said a few weeks ago, all of this still feels a lot more solid. Yeah, and so that's just 2 years from now. Force Awakens at 10. Great timing. Joel, you're the one who wanted to bring this up. What do you think?
Writer strike pending, of course.
Yes, writer strike pending, of course. But
as always. I know. I just thought it was just interesting. I thought since she's a fellow Canadian of Pakistani descent, and I've seen some of her documentary films. They are very good, very powerful stuff. You should go watch them. From a pop culture standpoint, she directed 2 episodes of Miss Marvel, but I think if you really want to know her true work, you should watch some of her documentaries. They are about a little dark here, but Pakistani women dealing with the trials and tribulations of being a woman in Pakistan and stuff that happens that involves sometimes people pouring stuff on your face, and it's not good. So yeah, but she does a good job with those. Very, very, dealing with like those issues, and I'm just kind of curious to see what she brings to the directorial, the Star Wars debut as a documentarian filmmaker. Which, funny enough, that's kind of where George himself had talked about it. Like, all right, I make documentary films, so kind of cool to see that tradition continued. But yeah, again, writer strike pending. How that could go. If I go sideways, then But I do think that Disney want film 2025 or bust, because the industry is just changing all over. They put it in the order. They want it.
There you go. Dom, what do you think? A Ray New Jedi Order film in 2 years. 2 years.
Yeah, I'm excited by the prospect. I remember when shortly after Rise of Skywalker came out, we were having a discussion of what we wanted the next Star Wars film to be. And my answer at the time was episode 10, because I didn't like where episode 9 left things as a sort of conclusion to the saga. And so that's basically, I think, what this movie is going to be. I kind of doubt they'll call it episode 10, but I like the idea that it's picking up that storyline and going to explore some of the some of the many dangling threads from the sequel trilogy, and hopefully put a more fitting, in my opinion, cap on that storyline involving Rey, Finn, and hopefully Poe, and Rose, and everybody.
I'm a little less confident they're gonna do that. I see this as almost a soft reboot / beginning of Rey's story with some new characters, and maybe you'll get those other characters too. We haven't heard anything yet, so
I'm feeling pretty good about Finn. But and look, a soft reboot I think works too. Like but it can also do those things that I was looking for. It can sort of put a new spin on the Rey story to give it, again, like I said, what to me it feels like it needs a better ending and a better capper, and I think this storyline has the potential to do that should they want to. And I was gonna say, I think 2025, I think that makes sense for this movie. Get back into sort of pick up where you left off. And then I'd sort of thought, okay, maybe the Filoni movie should be 2027. That should be like the big 50th anniversary of Star Wars celebration, that kind of thing. But then, honestly, the Mangold, like Dawn of the Jedi, like, wouldn't it be fun to let's celebrate what Star Wars has become by like doing what Mangold described as like a biblical epic. Like, let's go way, way back in the timeline, and like let's not just celebrate what Star Wars has been, which I think the Filoni movie will do very, very well, while also putting its own spin on it. But let's celebrate what it has been while also showing what it can be. I always think about this quote from Stephen Moffat when he was writing the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who. He was saying, all those guys who created the first episode, they got the ball rolling to get us here. Now I have to get the ball rolling to get us to the 100th anniversary. And I think a movie like that could be the perfect way to really jettison Star Wars into its next era. One that is vast and expansive in a way that, for as big as a universe as they've created, on screen it stayed relatively tight in the first 50 years. Now the next 50 years can go off in all wacky, crazy, new, fun directions.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how this Rey film, if it happens. By the way, Orange Juice Dude says hi to you, Dom.
Hi, Orange Juice Dude.
It'd be interesting to see how this Rey film kind of balances the things that I think you are talking about, where it's like, it's going to be episode. It's kind of will probably be somewhat episode 10 without the name episode 10, so we don't get the baggage.
I have a feeling I'm going to come out of that movie going, why didn't they just put episode 10 in that crawl?
But also, I think they do want this to be the start of a new series of films. Like, it's not going to be just here's the Rey film, and then we're done. It's here's the Rey film.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see some more Rey adventures with her new students. After all, it's called New Jedi Order. Let's get that. Let's get what Luke never got to have. With seeing her build the Jedi Order and hopefully doesn't blow up. At least not yet. But if you don't mind, yeah, I know. Pray. But if you don't mind, Matthew, guess what? I heard a rumor. So,
Gosh, we're doing that now. Okay.
I don't indulge. We don't indulge in rumors this much, but I thought it'd be interesting. But apparently they were gonna take this Rey film in perhaps a very different direction, where they were gonna time jump, yes, but time jump 60 years. Apparently that was what the Lindelof early drafts would have been, and they were thinking of basing elderly Rey off of Helen Mirren. And no disrespect to Helen Mirren, the Queen herself. I love Helen Mirren. She's awesome. She played the Queen. But it is kind of a strange thing to do, to kind of just go that far into the future so soon. It's like you got Daisy Ridley there. We have the chance to do with Rey what we couldn't really do with Luke. You know, I mean, sure, we could always recast, and that's fine. But it's sort of like, you know, it's still, you're always gonna like, you never got to see like the Mark Hamill Luke do the New Jedi Orders thing, because you only got it in books and stuff. So we have this chance now. Rey is of age. You know, Daisy Ridley's 35. They're gonna make Rey 35, age her up, because she's only 19 in the entire sequel trilogy.
Daisy Ridley's 35.
Yeah, I don't think she's quite there yet.
She's definitely older than not what her character Rey is in the sequel trilogy, because Rey's only
31. Like, so yeah, interesting. She's older than I thought. She's 31.
Yeah.
Right. So she will be 34 or 35, at least after. Oh, she'll be 33. I can do math. She'll be 33. 30. She'll be 34 if it's around there. Anyway,
right.
Yeah.
Remember, the sequels only take place over the course of a year, so Rey never ages that much. So you know, we get to finally see Rey do her thing. But I think this is obviously the better choice, to just bring back Daisy Ridley, show a youngish Rey, but also with some students. Maybe Finn as her partner in Jediing, and you know, kind of knew it starting as like both finishing, maybe putting a nice bow after the sequel, but also starting some new adventures, because I'm sure they're going to want to continue pushing the timeline forward.
Yeah, it's the same kind of logic as doing the Obi-Wan show. You know,
exactly.
You have Ewan McGregor now; he's the right age. Let's do it. Like, let's not be sitting here in 30 years going, gosh, you know, I wish we'd signed Mark Hamill to do a series in 1987. Right. Like, let's go. All right, we've got you, and he's game. Let's do it.
Exactly.
Got Daisy. She's game. Let's do it. They're the right age. They're interested. Let's tell these stories. Why wait?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, Dominic, you bring up a kind of a good point. If like this film had the chance, because, you know, Kenobi had the chance too. And I love Kenobi. We all love Kenobi around here, but you know, internet always makes things polarizing, but I think this had the chance to kind of please people who both don't and did like the finale of the sequel. Because, like, you know, if you love Daisy Ridley, then you love Rey, so you thought she was awesome throughout the whole trilogy. It's like, yay, more Rey. Who doesn't want that? If you didn't like how episode 9 did, it's like, okay, yay, another chance to kind of, you know, do something else and keep going. So I think it kind of has the chance to bridge some of these gaps together and, you know, be the unofficial episode 10. But I don't think they want to put that episode 10 marker because, you know, I think they do want a jumping on point, that soft reboot, as I call it. Yeah. To kind of spearhead the new era. But also kind of wrap
I want to back up to a bunch of thoughts because so with episode 10, I mean, like, it can do both at the same time. And you know, episode 7 did both at the same time 10 years on. The thing is, you call episode 10, people are going to expect 11 and 12. That's part of the problem there. I will say with Daisy Ridley, you want to talk about where she really shone is this film right here. You know, again, I mean, I will always declare my adoration for Last Jedi. She was so perfect in that film. So human, so raw, and so powerful. And her talent, her experience in Hollywood is just taken off from that. I mean, from Force Awakens too, but really, like, she's to have a lead role, to be a leader, again, at her age, 33, 34, And however old Ray is in that at that point, I don't quite know, but yeah, and you know, I mean, to show younger women taking on a leadership role. I mean, our society needs to see that, and so I mean, it'll be interesting to see, yes, what she's like later on. That is an intriguing idea. I'm not going to deny that, but right now we need Daisy Ridley to do Ray.
Yeah,
we have the rest of time to tell older Ray stories. But if you want to tell Ray stories, well, she's in that 20s, 30s, you know, approaching 40s age range. You know, that's how old Daisy Ridley's going to be for the next 10, 15 years. So let's get in there and tell them now. Let's not wait.
And there's something more interesting, I think, about telling that story a little bit more naturally than just time jump. You know, it's like, and now here's Luke and Leia, and they're old, and the Empire's back. What happened here? It's like, let me get there a little more naturally. And I think, you know, we could get there with Rey kind of like evolve her story. Like, obviously, we're time jumping a little bit, starting a new, happier status quo, but it's like, where's that status quo lead? I don't know. Let's get there naturally. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about when it comes to the rumors and the movie stuff. Because it's exciting, and obviously fellow Canadian Shireen Chinoy. Go watch some of her
Joel,
documentaries.
you're an honorary Canadian at this point. There we go. We're inducting you.
Okay. We did have, though, of course, one little announcement for Eye on Screen. Young Jedi Adventures, May the Force, yay! As we wouldn't be High Republic without mentioning that, of course.
Yes. Yeah. So.
All right. Yes, it's time. Mando Season 3, the third season of The Mandalorian. Fourth, if we count Book of Boba Fett, which I'm kind of doing at this point a little bit. Yeah. All right. This season. Oh boy. I guess let's just give our overall thoughts. So I'll start with myself first. Overall, a bit of an uneven season. I think I like it maybe more than season 1, but I think season 2 is still my favorite. I like a lot of the world building. I like the scale. I like seeing the New Republic a bit more and kind of getting us ready for the bigger stuff. But I think it kind of lacks a lot of the characterizations. I think some of the conflict between the Mandalorians is missing. I would have liked to gone deeper into Bo-Katan and to see Din's reactions to things as well. I feel like Din kind of got lost in his own season a lot. But overall, I mean, I still had fun. I still enjoyed it. But Dominic, I'll give it to you. What were your overall thoughts on this season so far?
I liked it overall. Like, I liked more of it than I disliked. And I think on rewatch I'll enjoy it again. Like, I think this was a good season. It was very entertaining, very enjoyable, and I liked where it wound up. I think those last 2 episodes are some of, if not the strongest, the show has ever been. I think it concluded this story that it's been telling over the first 3 seasons very, very strongly. I think there were a few speed wobbles on the way there where, you know, some of the storylines could have been a little bit stronger, things could have been emphasized a little bit more to make it so that when some of those big moments happened, they carried a little bit more kick to them. As it stands now, they carried a decent amount of kick, but there were a few places this season where I think that a little bit more time spent showing rather than telling us things were going on would have benefited the overall feeling. Because I think the story that John and Dave set out to tell in this season, I think they achieved it. I just think the middle chapters and the early chapters to a lesser extent are a little bit, like I said, a little bit wobbly. They don't quite stack up as well as I think they could have or should have. So strong season, amazing ending. I think that's the best finale this show has done to date. But a little bit of a shaky road to get there. A little rocky road.
Beautiful visuals too, by the way. I think this is the best this show has looked. You already said this was your favorite season, Matthew. So do you want to go a little deeper?
Yeah.
Into
So again, we've gotten 3 seasons of Mando, Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi, and What am I blanking on?
Andor.
Yeah, Andor. Andor. All the other 5 were great. This is definitely my favorite season of live action Star Wars we've
Nice.
gotten. Yeah, those. I mean, so first of all, I should just bring the prequel shirt back, because that Guns for Hire is. I mean, people. It's a bit of an AP5 singing his musical, but I love that moment. That is my favorite episode of the series. Full stop. It's so wacky and so ridiculous.
I love this. I love the CSI part of it.
The CSI part. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But then we get a moment we've actually been building up to. Maybe because Bo-Katan lives rent free in my head. And no, not rent free. She's earned that. She earned the rent. She pays rent in my head from just about one episode in, I guess, season 2. Everything in Clone Wars and Rebels, everything that's been building up since then. You get that moment where she gets the Darksaber and she becomes the title character. She is the Mandalorian now. I mean, not by herself, but that's the point. I know we're getting into her journey in a bit, but yeah, I mean, it may be. I see the point about it being fast, of going through things quickly, but it did that in order to really push the story forward to where it needs to go in the next few seasons. And that's the point, is this middle chapter, this hinge chapter that really drives the series forward, because it builds up. We finally have Mandalorians on Mandalore. The thing we've been, especially since the end of season 1, with Moff Gideon talking about the Night of 1,000 Years, and the armor talking about the purge and the curse of Mandalore, and it being this far off thing, that we've finally gotten there. And so I was satisfied by it. Like I said, we got there in that kind of finale, that spectacular finale. So I'm here for it. And also the way I've mentioned this before, it's worth mentioning again. The way the speeder chases, the starfighter battles were shot, night and day from Book of Boba Fett, I gotta say. Probably the most riveting, really better than the Battle of Scarif on Rogue One, which is saying something, because that's fantastic. I
wouldn't go that far.
I was okay. I guess given its length, maybe it's a bit of a hot take, but you take moments and the quality of the excitement and the speed, it's more exciting even than the Battle of Scarif. I'll say that. If they have the time to make a full scale battle, which looks like they might.
What's that movie?
Yeah, with the movie or whatever. I trust them now. I wouldn't have trusted them with Book of Boba Fett. I trust them now to make a battle that can top Battle of Scarif.
I think they're getting the technology down in terms of just volume centric Star Wars.
Yeah.
So there's that. I think I'll definitely agree with that. I think the technology is getting a lot better. Yep. Good points. Orange juice dude. Very, very good. Just gonna go through some of them. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get to the future. I have some maybe more cynical takes on the future of the show. But we'll get there. But yeah. So this season was very much about the restoration of Mandalore. The restoration of, it's very much the culmination of a lot of arcs. Going back to Clone Wars. But I am curious, and I'll throw it to you, Dominic. A very interesting question I want your perspective of. Does season 3 and some of the emotional stuff behind it still work if you haven't seen Clone Wars or Rebels? Do you think someone who does, be it the stubborn person who doesn't want to accept animation as a legitimate form of art, or someone who just like, I'm too lazy, or just someone who just hasn't watched it, do you think some of the stuff with Bo-Katan, with the Mandalorian, does it work better for maybe us because we've been through all this in a way it might not hit for those who are just watching this for Din and the baby?
I think the backstory obviously helps. Knowing it, I think helps, and it adds another layer. But I think there was enough there in this season. Some of the and last season, honestly, I think the scenes with Bo-Katan, I think Katie Sackhoff brought to her performance a sense that this character has been through a lot, in the same way that Alec Guinness did that in A New Hope. There's a sense
Okay.
that this character has been through a lot. They've experienced a whole other life of stories that they're just going to allude to, and they'll tell us little bits and pieces that are important, but it's knowing the specifics of it isn't necessary for this part of the storyline. So
Yeah.
I think Katie Sackhoff sort of carried that really well, and I think we got enough seeing Mandalore destroyed, knowing that she was the leader who was ruling Mandalore when this happened, who lost all of her cred, lost everything because she tried to make peace with the Empire. She tried to make a deal with the devil in the form of Moff Gideon and lost. I think overall, I think this season, I do think there's enough there that it works regardless of whether you know the backstory. If you know the backstory, that's great. It adds that extra layer. It's sort of like reading Catalyst before seeing Rogue One. If you watch that first scene between Galen and Krennic, everything you need is in that scene. But if you've read the book, there's a little bit more to it, and you understand the deeper relationship and the deeper betrayal that's going on there.
I think, I agree. I think the one I think that really did that the best, at least for me, was episode 2, Minds of, what do we want to call it? Minds of Mori, Minds of Mandalore. Where Bo-Katan talking about, like, oh, I was an embarrassment to my father that day when I took the creed. It's like it kind of has the like I fought in the Clone Wars too, same as your father. I was a cartoon character too. But it's like for the general audience, it's like, okay, that's a character with some history, with some backstory. Obviously, we know about Satine and the Mando Civil War and the Siege of Mandalore and whatnot. But right now, for the story, it's very much she's just talking about I was the Mando princess and. I did the things and it was silly and that sort of thing.
I mean, even before that, the first shot on that throne there on Kalevala, just by herself, completely bummed out, whatever. Having the drink, I think. Clearly, like, no meaning to her life, all by herself. She has the droid, that's fine. But that in itself, I think, really immediately sold us on. Oh, she's even the few years since we last saw her, or the year, whatever, how long it's been since we last saw her in the Mandalorian, but then all that time stewing over whatever might have happened that we do learn would have happened. It's a similar thing with the Darksaber, right? I mean, the moment Gideon breaks out of his TIE fighter with the Darksaber, we all lose our minds. I immediately go to the video in Rebels that with Gar Saxon, and is it Gar Saxon or whoever it is, but
Fen Rao.
Fen Rao, not Gar Saxon, wrong faction. Fen Rao and Canon. But clearly there is a story there with the Darksaber, a mythology around it that this series does a great job of developing, not so much developing, but alerting to the characters care about this sword more than we know, more than we might know literally. But then, of course, at the end, the symbolic moment where Gideon destroys it, and that that symbolic moment of, okay, this weapon can no longer be a source of this farcical aquatic ceremony. That's a Monty Python reference. About what leadership means and what it means to actually rule Mandalore. I mean, that's kind of underlies the point about people maybe complaining about, okay, this weird fiction where Din loses it and then like Creature wins it and then Bo gets it back. Gideon destroys it. It doesn't matter. There's more important things to leadership than having a farcical aquatic ceremony.
And I do I do think there are a lot of people pointing this out plenty of times. There's a lot of Jewish allegory with the reclaiming of the homeland, the various factions all scattered, Mandalore is their holy land and they will reclaim it from the Imperial force, which I liked. I also I'll have to ask you this, Matthew. Did you get Wrath of Khan vibe with the water, with the plantation underneath the ground? I just felt like someone was going to say,
I totally did.
Do I
did.
cook or do I cook? I was waiting for someone to say that.
The Genesis planet thing. I definitely. I mean, and it's not just Wrath of Khan. I mean, there's other stories about nature reclaiming land out of
That's my go-to.
Wasteland. But yeah, that was definitely where my one went. For those who don't know, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, there's this device that can terraform a dead planet into something else. And there's a moment. I won't tell any more of that, but you should all see The Wrath of Khan. Just putting it out there. But
that's the vibe I got. And it was cool seeing Mandalore again. It was cool seeing Sundari, just in ruins and destroyed. This also makes Book of Boba Fett's Mando episodes, I think, much better openers for the season, because at least you see the destruction of the planet. So that kind of thread is there, and that's why I could kind of say, well, you kind of now have to watch Book of Boba Fett, because it makes for a better season 3 opener. That first Mando episode, and all the stuff with the Darksaber.
But Din Djarin, not the Mandalorian. Yeah. Well, and also it earned that. Like, it earned people. The whole thing about people being confused on what happened. They have to go back. I mean, again, we've talked about Book of Boba Fett being this weird, oddly named thing where we set up this story about Boba Fett's story. It was really just little anthologies setting up future like Mandalorian stories. But
yeah, I think I go back to, I think I said this, early on in the season. I think what Book of Boba showed us is that, the expectation for the Mandoverse is that everybody's going to watch everything. Yeah. And there's going to be elements of each show that aren't specifically related to that show, but they're related to the larger storyline. So with Book of Boba, you had those Din Djarin episodes, and that also involved Luke and Ahsoka that kind of allude to this larger thing going on. And in this season of Mando, you have the stuff with the pirates that seems to be setting up Skeleton Crew. You have that whole episode with Pershing and Elia Kane that seems to be more in the Thrawn storyline than having anything to do with Mandalore. And that you can probably remove much of that episode from the season and have the Din Djarin, Bo-Katan, Grogu storyline play out pretty much as is. But when it comes time to understand the full picture of what Dave and John are doing leading up to this movie that will almost certainly be called The Heir to the Empire,
we'll see.
Unless my theory comes true.
That episode is going to wind up being crucial. And the story, just like those Din Djarin, Grogu, Luke, Ahsoka episodes of Book of Boba wound up being crucial, even though they didn't really do anything for Boba's storyline.
I just want to jump in. The one thing that does connect thematically, I mentioned this planet before. Coruscant is a character, and Coruscant is becoming a lead character in Star Wars. I mean, it's been a lead character since Episode 1, but to have these two Coruscant episodes, Coruscant scenes, I should say. One, obviously the whole episode with Pershing, but then of course Grogu and his story with Keller and Beck. To have that visual connection did serve in terms of our experience to tie it back into the larger Mandalorian story. I mean, I'd like to see a little more about we will see Grogu's story. We got to see what happens next, but yeah, we're going to see how they all connect together, and that's partly what I'm hoping for here, what I'm going for, why I was fine. And I think having those episodes in there was necessary. Having the Pershing episode in there was necessary in this, because especially what I've heard with the rumor is, we know Rangers of the New Republic isn't going to happen. It's going to be in Mandalorian season 4. So, I mean, they're going to have to figure out a way to make it feel like it's part of the same show. Having the Coruscant connection is one of those ways. Having these visual clues is one of those ways. And I mean, again, people might complain about the pacing of that. I didn't. I thought it worked well.
I'll just say, I think in the long run, I think the way Book of Boba Fett kind of handled this will be more of a fluke.
Yeah.
And I think that when we see like Ahsoka, I think Ahsoka will be a little bit more focused on the Ahsoka part. Not that I don't think maybe, I mean, it's always possible, she's going to run into Din again. I think that, but I am less sure if they'll do the full on. Here's just a whole on episode about Din in the Ahsoka show. I mean, it's possible, but I think I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I could be proven wrong, and that could happen. I think they might have refined how to do the interconnectivity thing, where it's like you read it all, but it doesn't kind of do the weird thing like that.
I think Ahsoka might wind up feeling more like Mando season 2, where it's pretty focused
Yeah.
on its main character or characters. But a lot of people are going to come in and out of that season that are going to start popping up other places, including Thrawn.
I could see that for
Mhm.
sure. But speaking of our titular character of Mr. Din Djarin, I'm gonna throw this to you, Dominic. And Dominic, I got a question for you. What was Din's arc this season? What did he learn? What did he do? What was Din's arc this season?
Excellent question. No, what I liked about this season is I did like that it played with our expectations that you go into that season thinking Din has to be the one to reclaim Mandalore. But in the end, he wound up being the one to support the one who could reclaim Mandalore. And it sort of reminds me of some of the best episodes of Andor, which are the Narkina 5 episodes, where Cassian doesn't lead the revolution, but he inspires the guy who does lead the revolution. And that is an important skill set in and of itself. And, is Din Djarin going to be the guy to kill Thrawn? Maybe not. But he is going to be the guy who can bring together all the different factions to take on Thrawn. He's the guy that has connections inside each one and strong connections inside each one. He helped Bo-Katan reclaim Mandalore. He's got this. He's come to this agreement with Carson Teva. Him and Boba Fett are best bros. They saved Tatooine together. He can unite the Mandalorians, the Underworld, and the New Republic, and also bring in the Jedi with Grogu and Luke and Ahsoka. This is the guy who can bring the factions together. And so he may not be the one in the final showdown with Thrawn. He may well be, but he may not need to be in order to be the hero of this storyline. So it's more of a subtle arc than his very sort of overt arcs in seasons 1 and 2. But I think it's an important part of his story to prepare him for where he needs to go in the lead up to this larger war that's coming.
I agree. My critique of Din's arc this season, it actually has nothing to do with him not being like the Mando King. I always felt he was more of a Jon Snow, to be quite honest. Right? Like everyone.
That's a good spot. That's good spot.
And everyone thought Jon Snow was gonna be the king and whatnot. And like, I'm kind of looking at Game of Thrones as just a series. Like, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think that was more the fooling stuff. But much like Game of Thrones season 8, when it comes to like the rushness and execution of it all, I do feel like some things were dropped, which I felt like could have been punctuated a lot more. Like kind of the gaslighting he got from the Coven, where it's like you took off your helmet. And it's like, man, we don't like you anymore, Dig. You took off your helmet. Even though you saved Ragnar once. Like, I guess the armor was kind of nice to talk to him. It's like, well, you can try, but we still don't want you around. You took off your helmet. And it's sort of like, the armor never kind of comes and apologizes. Like, yeah, maybe I was wrong to judge the whole you took off your helmet thing. And, learning from, and we'll get to the armor a little bit when she's like, Bo could walk both worlds. Could I say so? That's why. Sort of like, well, Din took off his helmet. Can he take it off his helmet now? I mean, if he doesn't want to in his own personal life, that's one thing. But it's like he kind of got gaslit by his.
What's the state of the code?
He kind of got gaslit by his Coven here, and sort of like, did they change their mind? Are they going to apologize for gaslighting it? Din? And it's like,
is apologizing the way?
It's like, well, how come she gets to take off the helmet, and then I did it, and I got in trouble, even though I was trying to rescue the son, pretty much. So it's like I kind of wish more of that had been emphasized, a lot more. The questioning, that's kind of my biggest critique of Din's arc this season. I mean, I totally don't mind him supporting Bo as the Mando Queen's arc. I always felt he was never gonna be the King Arthur. I know some people did, but I always kind of felt a little weirded out by the fact that Din's not questioning the fact that your people are kind of gaslighting you. Like, if you want to do the whole code thing, that's your business. But it's like, hey, your fellow Mandos were kind of being jerks.
Yeah. And you bring up the moment where he takes off his helmet intentionally so Grogu can see him. I mean, again, this is me looking forward, and this is being the transitional moment in this series. So much of this series has been the Din and Grogu show, and
Right.
and Din's arc from season 1, from the first moment, well, not the first moment, but the moment he opens the pram and touches Grogu's finger, until this moment, the last moment where he adopts him and makes him his apprentice, has been all about going from this is this nuisance kid to this is my protection, to okay, well, he's still a kid, but he can actually be my collaborator, my partner in crime here.
Son.
Son, but in a very interestingly similar way to the way Django wanted with Boba, I think. And this is Jody Houser's Age of Republic comic. The Django Fett comic is really a Boba Fett comic. Drawing that parallel where Django wanted Boba to actually be his partner in crime here, and Grogu now accepts Grogu as someone who's capable of fighting on his own. I mean, Grogu just does it anyway, even if he's not allowed to, but proves that he can. And a lot of that, of course, is Luke's training, his ability to use the Force and to step up. And so that the effect that that has on Din, of course, we're gonna have to see that going forward. But it really is. I mean, it really is gonna, he's gonna be protective, but maybe not overprotective. He's going to intentionally have to put the kid in a little bit of danger, trusting that he's going to be capable of handling himself. Hopefully, I mean, he has the IG-12 thing, yes no thing, but yeah, I guess. Well, I guess not so much anymore because he's the marshal, but something like that could happen again. Seeing Grogu maybe be able to talk, I don't know, but or communicate more clearly at least. And there's that, and then of course, like you said, the link to the Jedi. That Din, maybe I don't know how much he was able to trust Jedi or not, but now very much reliant on this one kid in part of his family.
Dominic, I'll toss this question to you about Din's arc with regard to like the helmet rule and the Coven. Do you think that the season could have been, and maybe Favreau just wasn't interested in going this route? Maybe he doesn't see it this way. Could have been maybe, even if it comes on the side of the Mandos, maybe just a bit more critical about those rules, and maybe like, hey, you're gaslighting Din here, and Din kind of not questioning his face and losing it, but just kind of realizing, you guys were kind of jerks to me still. It's like, what up with that? So like, could have been maybe just had more critical, even if it still comes down to we all got to work together to take down Gideon.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this season wound up being a lot more nuanced on the Coven than I think I was expecting, because I went into it expecting it to be kind of a criticism of the never take your helmet off rule, and instead, what we saw is how that group of Mandalorians have formed a really strong sense of community and a really tight bond amongst themselves, and to the point where they're willing to fight and die for each other. And that was something that Bo-Katan needed to see to complete her journey, because she's very cynical. Even when we meet her in season 2, she's very, very cynical about Mandalore. She wants Mandalore to be united and reclaimed and restored, but she's very cynical about their traditions and a lot of the things that make people Mandalorians. And so she needed to go and join up with this cult for a little bit, and who take it all to the extreme to understand the value of it, so that she can pull from those values and apply them to a larger Mandalorian society. Now, as that relates to Din Djarin, I do think so much was made of the helmet thing, and it was so quickly discarded that I think, even if there's the whole thing of maybe Din's helmet should have just been off in that final scene, when it's just him and Grogu, when it's just this little sort of family moment. It sort of, implies that, he's going to keep his helmet on most of the time, but he's not so strict to the rules that he has to have it on all the time. I think that would have been nice. Something like that could have been good. But ultimately, I think this season alluded to a lot of tension and told us there was a lot of tension and showed a couple of tense moments between the different Mandalorian sects, but it never quite bubbled over in the way that I think it could have, should have, and needed to really emphasize the specialness and the uniqueness of what Bo-Katan and Din Djarin were able to accomplish in uniting those factions. That whole scene when Bo says, "I need volunteers from each camp to come on this mission." All they had really done is grimace at each other and kind of glare at each other and have a bit of a stare down. And then they all just sort of, yeah, okay, we can work together. That's fine. I think if there had been, some actual Mando on Mando violence this season, then I think that moment when they go, you know what, there are some things that are bigger than our personal disagreements over whether you are required to wear your helmet at all times to be a Mandalorian. I think that moment it would be more powerful, and you can still have the Paz axe scrap later on, and I think Grogu breaking that up later after there has been some other hypothetical confrontation between these Mandalorians that is more intense than just grr you followed by clang 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 everybody chill. I think that's even more powerful. So that I think is, if I'm looking for the missing ingredient from this season, it's that Mando tension, actually manifesting into something more than just a scrap after they've already agreed to work together. I think that's what was missing. And the episode that I pick on as being sort of the big problem with this season is the 4th episode, which is the one where Paz's kid gets kidnapped by the dragon. And that episode is meant to show Bo-Katan winning over and the Covenant and showing how her way can work too. And I get that that's what it's doing in theory, but that whole storyline is just, it's missing. To me, that episode is missing any tension besides, can we get the kid back from the bird? And there were so many opportunities in it, not even to have the characters fight, but just to have the characters argue and to have the characters disagree. But instead, they're all just kind of in agreement the whole time of, yeah, okay, we got to save the kid somehow.
I think,
and I think if you show that tension on screen, you show that conflict on screen, it makes everything that happens later, from rescuing Ragnar on, all the more impactful, because it's them realizing they can overcome their differences and have those differences have been really manifest in an impactful way. That is more than just snarling at each other.
Yeah, this is where I see Jon Favreau's writing style starting to. Maybe he wants to be ambitious with the season, but I think his style does not necessarily equate to this sort of. He's very monster of the week kind of guy.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna say I think season 4 is going to be much more like seasons 1 and 2. I think it's going to be much more of the adventure of the week. I think that CSI episode. I think that's more the type of episode we're going to see in season 4 than the extended arc that was season 3. I think season 4 is going to go back to being much more episode of the week, and there'll be an arc through it, but it'll be a little looser, and the stuff will be, we won't be looking at a big plot necessarily, but we'll be mapping, character growth from what did they do in this one adventure to what did they do in this one adventure to what did they do in this one adventure. And I think that's the story that John wanted to tell from the beginning. I think the restoration of Mandalore storyline, I think that's a Filoni idea. And I think they were each pitching this idea at separate points, and Kennedy put them together and they said, hey, what if we combine them into one? Because I think John wanted to do the Mandalorian bounty hunter Boba Fett show without calling it the Boba Fett show. That is basically what season 1 is. And if you look at what Dave was doing in Rebels around 2016, 2017 with the Sabine storyline, a lot of this stuff that we're seeing could have very easily played out with Sabine and Bo-Katan instead of Din Djarin and Bo-Katan in animated form. So I think Dave was pitching that idea. John was pitching that idea. Kennedy said, let's work together, guys. And they said, okay, let's do it. And they melded their styles. And sometimes it works really, really well. And other times, you know, you'll see each's relative strengths and weaknesses.
Sorry, I just want to dive in there. It definitely, I see what you're saying, Dom, about being Filoni. I mean, it's definitely in the more Clone Wars Rebels-esque sort of larger scale storytelling.
It's his
at least
character.
from the way I see larger scale storytelling. I mean, Mandalorian, everything that's set up in Clone Wars Rebels. Again, but that's what I love about this season is what it does. It allows for the more episode by episode, let's string it through, because this sets a new foundation for what's happening. And again, that's why I'm okay with it being faster. Another reason I'm okay with it happening faster without as much tension is because, I mean, I'm reading it a little bit into it, but seeing the actual beliefs of this faction, I really think there's something to the fact that Bo-Katan has seen the Mythosaur and is the heir to the throne, and went through the water and came back. The same. I mean, that's the thing. Din needed to believe in the thing about the helmet in order to actually go through the water and come back, for Bo-Katan to also rescue him and dive in, just because she's trying to save his life. But I think there's more to that they could have also maybe talked about. But I appreciate I'm okay with them leaving that a bit more implied. It gets my juices going about what do these communities really believe about the universe and about these stories and the power of stories, which again goes back to everything with the Darksaber, right?
Mm-hmm.
The power of story. The story can come to an end and be replaced by a new story that I mean, everything to do with them being able to go to the planet. That changes everything for the armor, for the Children of the Watch, to actually go in and not be suffocated because it's not actually poisoned, or they're able to make it through. It's not cursed. This kind of sense of changing imagination, the armor being able to adapt what she thinks and sees. I do think there's also room in season 4 for them to develop what they really feel about. I do see your point, like in terms of a drama arc, but I'm okay with it.
I agree with. I think I agree with you. Like the character arcs of Bo and the armor, I think are really interesting and really strong over the course of the season.
Yeah.
I just think those arcs could have been enhanced by them actually having to, like, not just get between the two groups and bang the hammers together and say, I need some from you and some from you to come with me. To actually get between the groups and go, stop fighting. Literally, we have more in common and we have a common enemy. Let's find a way to work together. And then that's, I think, what was missing from this storyline was that tension between the two factions actually manifesting in some way.
I want to just comment on some comments from Sam the Sham. Maybe season 3 seemed disjointed to some because of that seeming parting of ways between creators from a narrative trajectory. I don't think it's a parting of ways per se. I mean, I do see the Filoni idea, maybe Favreau style, not gelling quite properly for sure. I think Dave does like a lot more of that Mando on Mando factions fighting. You see it in his Rebels episode. You see it in Clone Wars. You see it in the way he talks. I do think Filoni was probably busy this season, kind of going off and doing Ahsoka. That's for sure. I think John was kind of left to his own devices a little bit, just given the production history. Did set up Dave's story, and now John can now have his lone wolf and cub adventures detached as needed from the larger story of Thrawn. Well, I don't know if I agree with that part per se, because
I think
if Din's going off against Imperial remnants, then he's going off against Imperial remnants when Mr. Big Bad Thrawn is coming full force soon.
But that is the Lone Wolf and Cub story. Still, it's the Lone Wolf and Cub story in light of what's happening with Thrawn.
Yeah, I think the Ahsoka show is going to kind of open up the Thrawn part of the galaxy in a way that's only been hinted at in these Mando episodes, and fairly early into season 4, it wouldn't shock me to have Ahsoka pop up in that show and say, "Hey, Din," or perhaps not Ahsoka, perhaps it's Sabine, like one of those characters go, "Hey, like, you guys are investigating this. Let me tell you this crazy shirt that we've seen out in the Outer Rim that we gotta start dealing with. Investigate this little droid uprising over there. But the real you know what is happening over here, and I need you to come help me look at it and
Sabine,
figure out
of
what
course,
to do.
Sabine, a Mandalorian. Her mother was Bo-Katan's right hand. So that would make. I mean, I'm almost. I wouldn't have been surprised if we had seen her in season 3.
I thought we were. I
yeah.
thought we were.
I thought we'd see her and Fen Rao.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd heard some rumblings, and
Yeah.
I'm starting to think those things. Some of the things I heard about season 3 of Mando were actually about Ahsoka, because one of the things I heard about season 3 of Mando just showed up in the Ahsoka trailer. So I'm like, okay, so maybe some of those things just a little further down the time.
Fair enough.
Timeline.
But I would like to see more. I mean, they did with Sabine. They did a little bit in Rebels with her Mandalorian heritage, but we see in the trailer. I mean, people. That's interesting. People who haven't seen Rebels, seeing this cool looking person with the long pink hair. I mean, there's also the image of her short hair, but that she's as much a Mandalorian as any of these other people. It's just that she's without context. We know that she's held the Darksaber. She has the helmet. I mean, even from that his character design. Oh yeah, she's Mandalorian. It would be great to see her in this context with other Mandalorians exploring her heritage even more.
I'm just realizing someone in Skeleton Crew's got to have a Mandalorian suit of armor, because every show in the Mandoverse, whether it's about Din Djarin, Boba Fett, or Ahsoka and Sabine, one of the main characters is running around in some Beskar armor.
Probably.
So someone
one of the kids.
one of the kids, or Jude Law secretly has a Mandalorian helmet somewhere, in addition to being able to use the Force.
Yeah.
He's another Mando Jedi.
Yeah.
Do you think Grogu-Luke relationship was just setting the table for a different interaction between Ahsoka and Luke, or will Luke's relationship to Grogu resurface down the road? I think it will. I mean, I think it kind of does a little bit in the second to last episode, where it's like Din breaks up the Mando fighting. It's like Din's like, didn't learn that from me. That's Jedi training right there. You know, bringing peace between the groups and whatnot. And I'm sure we'll see Ahsoka and Luke again.
Yeah, I hope. I think there's too many. I think that Luke thread is too tantalizing one for them not to pull it again, and I sort of applaud them for having the wherewithal to hold back on going right back to Luke for season 3 of Mandalorian. But I do think that at some point Grogu and Luke have got to have another scene together, and I think it's important for Luke to see what Grogu has become without him. Yeah, because I agree that there's something very powerful about Luke letting Grogu choose his own fate and saying, let's do this, let's do that. But I do think there's still a little bit of hubris in Luke in some of those scenes where he's like, I can teach you to do this. I can do this. I will be your great teacher. And together we shall become a great Jedi and Jedi Master and Jedi Knights and all that stuff. So I think it's important for Luke to get a little bit of humility there about, there is another way. There are multiple ways, not just the Jedi way. And it's maybe Luke won't get that lesson. Maybe he won't fully appreciate it because we know he makes pretty big mistakes later on in his life. But that happens to everybody.
It does.
Who hasn't threatened to kill their nephew in the middle of the night because of a bad dream? Because of a bad dream they had one time. Who among us can honestly say we haven't considered that at least?
Let who was without sin cast the first stone.
Small detour, but I gotta say, I'm actually quite appreciative of season 3 for not having a lot of big cameos. Like I know some of us wanted Boba at the end to rescue, or even a Fen Rao and Sabine. I'm kind of just glad it's just sort of self-contained enough, and it's just like they did it themselves. It's like there's no last minute hero. I mean, like the only cameos like are close enough are Pelion and Hux.
Yeah, I was gonna say we got live action Pelion, live action Brendel.
Which to me is like, I mean,
Zeb.
Zeb.
That's right, Zeb. But I mean, like, they're not intrusive cameos. It's like Luke Skywalker being MacGuffin. The Deus Ex Machina of the finale.
Well, so I think season 2 handled the cameos really, really well. I think they brought in those characters in natural ways, and I think the Ahsoka show is going to do a lot of that too.
Yes.
But I'm with you, Joel. I think you know, the temptation would have been after seeing the response to season 2 and seeing all those reaction videos of everybody freaking out anytime anybody showed up on screen to go, okay, we need to do more of that. Who can we get? All right, let's get Han in here. Let's get Lando in here. Let's get Leia in here. Let's get them all in here.
Hondo, no,
Hondo, yeah, any of them, like, you know, any number of characters. I think the temptation was there, and they held back. Really, the only one that's even a little bit gratuitous is the Zeb one, but even then, it's so, you know, it's
natural.
You know,
enough,
having
I think.
Carson Teva talking about that scene, talking about what he's about to do with a member of the Rebel Alliance. If you say that's somebody else that isn't Zeb, that scene still works and still serves a purpose in the storyline. The Pelion and Hux ones, though, like those are just part of the story. Like that's just setting up establishing where Moff Gideon is and setting up where the story is going.
They're not even really cameos.
Yeah,
they're
introductions.
Yeah.
I was even shocked, but kind of happy that they didn't do like after credit scene where it's like, and here's Thrawn watching it all, like dun dun dun, Thanos smile.
Yeah, it was very fast.
Yeah,
you know,
I'll do it myself.
Yeah, I don't love that Star Wars got into doing the post-credit scenes. I don't think it needs them.
No.
The Book of Boba one, like the season 2 one that set up Book of Boba, like that was almost more of a teaser trailer. I think that sort of like works kind of in its own way. The Andor one, I liked it because it was just a little Easter egg stinger, paying off something from earlier in the season. It's the Book of Boba one with Cobb Vanth and the thing where it's like, oh, this is just a blatant bit of setup for something else.
Yeah.
And that hasn't come to fruition yet, by the way. And I didn't want every season of The Mandalorian, every season of these shows, I want them to end and be judged on their own merits, not judged on what's coming next.
The Marvel problem.
Yeah, which is, you'll go see a Marvel movie and you'll be like, that was an okay movie. And then there's like an incredible post-credit scene that's teasing something else. And you're like, amazing. That won it over. Or you'll see a great Marvel movie and then the post-credit scene is kind of and you're like, oh, well, that's disappointing. So like, let these things sort of stand on their own. And I kind of hope that if we do get more post-credit scenes, they're kind of in the Andor model of we're just gonna pay off a little something from the season that we didn't fully explain during.
Again, that wasn't even. I mean, the thing about that one, it doesn't be like, oh, okay, this next season, and this is a thing we've known about since 1977. It's right behind you. It's a Death Star. You know, we kind of all hear that. So yeah, it was really well done. I will say, I still want Plo Koon's Force Ghost to come and taunt Luke and say, I could have trained him. He would have stayed with me. Come on.
Dave Filoni would too. He would do that.
Would totally. I don't actually believe that's going to ever happen. Don't worry.
No.
But
you never know. You never know.
Contrary to popular belief, I do think Dave does have incredible restraint.
Yes,
in terms of doing some of these things.
You know, AP5 is going to be musical, but
we'll get to it when we talk a little bit about the future. But it is interesting that despite obviously what we kind of speculate about, Din going up against Imperial remnants at the worst possible time in galactic history right now. This season was very self-contained and didn't do the Marvel thing of let in next time the Thrawns are coming. Ahsoka's probably going to, kind of just we're done.
Yeah, if anything, the story's just like, all right. If anything, this felt like a series finale.
Yeah,
and it's just like, all right, it's over.
Again, what I'm saying about the pacing of the season, why I was okay with it, because it got to a point anyway.
And stopped. Yeah, well, it sort of feels like it's the end of book 1.
Yeah,
book 1 has been Mando season 1, Mando season 2, Book of Boba Fett, and Mando season 3.
Volume 1 of a full comic arc. You know?
Yeah. Volume 1 is those storylines, and now Volume 2 begins with Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, and will continue with Mando season 4 potentially, and who knows what else they might have coming down the road.
There's a good type of Marvel thing that happens.
Yeah, this is very much the end of phase 1 for sure. But we'll get there when we talk about the future a little bit, because I want to get to now the one and only Mando Queen herself, Bo-Katan Kryse. Woo! Yeah, I mean, I think her arc was very more self-explanatory of this is a redemption arc. This is a redemption arc of 30-something years, starting out as a Mando terrorist who burned down a village in that one episode of Clone Wars to the uniter of Mandalorian. Sorry, my computer's moving. My cat's behind it. But it's interesting. I have positive but some mixed feelings on just how it was handled. Because on the one hand, I think this is my favorite version of Bo-Katan. I feel like the Rebels version was a little too white hat, a little too hero, trying to wear, Bo-Katan in Clone Wars was a terrorist, and I mean a full-on terrorist. She burnt down a village. She betrayed her sister to Paz Vizsla. She helped Maul. She turned on Maul eventually. And then in Rebels, it's kind of like, here's a dark saber. You're good. You're the hero. Sabine's like, here you go. You should do it. And in some ways, I feel like that kind of happened again with her. I felt I would have liked a little bit more her reckoning with the fact that she had some sins. She's very sketchy. She has lived a life of sketchiness, and she's kind of, obviously we're seeing, kind of like feel a little remorse, like, she's kind of semi-responsible for the death of her own sister. She burned down that village in that one episode of Clone Wars that who's the guy who annoys me? Who's Ahsoka's boyfriend?
Lux.
Lux has kind of helped out. Sorry, not boyfriend, but Lux, the guy like
of some sort.
interest of sorts. We got a little bit of that Minds of Mandalore. Count myself, where she's like, she got a little bit of that bitterness. But I kind of wonder if, like, I would have like just maybe like a scene just talking to Din of like, I did a lot of stuff in my past. Like, I would have like that scene at the second to last episode where it's like, I will follow you to the end kind of a situation.
Yeah.
I would have liked that, but I would like to I would have liked Bo to like talk to Din first of like saying something like, I did all this horrible things. I've done a lot of horrible things in my past. She doesn't even have to get specific. She doesn't have to mention Darth Maul or anything. Just like, I did a lot of horrible things, burnt down a village, accidentally helped out a Sith Lord, followed the wrong person.
Betrayed her sister,
that sounds like a situation on a sitcom where somebody's like describing all the bad things they've done. Accidentally helped a Sith Lord rise to power. It's like accidentally stole a dog one time. It's like
Arrested Development.
Hold on, wait, what did you do?
Had some prejudices about bloodlines and whatnot, and then
I might have committed some light treason,
like massacres, a couple of that.
Bryce Dallas Howard getting involved,
and then Din would go, you.
And now the story of some wealthy Mandalorians who lost everything.
Exactly,
and the one queen who had no choice but to keep them all together.
Exactly. But
it's the Mandalorian.
That's perfect. That's so perfect. Directed by Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah. Well, she does the voiceover. She takes over for Ron. And
there we go. Yeah.
Exactly. But then Din's like, hey, what you're doing now is what matters, and I see the good in you. I'm gonna follow you to the end. I, the hero, think you're cool. And I feel like that just could have given her arc, which I do think is a good redemption arc, just a little bit more punch. Could kind of acknowledge, Bo-Katan, you did some kind of terrible things. You massacred that village in that one episode. You did more damage than the armorer, who, like, at least the armorer didn't do that stuff. She didn't help out a Sith Lord, as far as we know. No.
That we know of. That we know of.
Yeah, it's true. We got a few more seasons to go. But overall, I do think I do like her arc overall. It's just, again, I think that Favreau style doesn't give it the necessarily the punch it needed. But Dominic, I'll turn it to you. What are your thoughts on just Bo-Katan, her arc? Did need a little bit more punch? Again, she burned down that village, etc., etc.
I think Bo-Katan's storyline was. I think it worked. That's that episode. Those episodes did happen. I think we've already seen enough in the Mandalorian storylines in Clone Wars that where she's sort of had to pay for her sins in the Clone Wars. So I don't need that to sort of carry over into this show. I feel like that side of it has already been addressed within that show. And so, I like we've been saying, I think, it could have been strengthened if we had more of that overt tension and overt conflict between the Mando groups. But otherwise, I think that where it wound up was very strong. I think where it started was very interesting, and I do think like it had a good rise and fall. It just, as I said with the other stuff, it was just missing a little bit in the middle. So, overall good, overall strong. I think this is definitely one of the strengths of the season.
Yeah, I again, as I said before, I'm okay with them choosing. Like, I know some people maybe going and thought Din was more of a King Arthur type. You know, he got the sword, so you get to be the Mando King, and obviously
I didn't vote for him.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
done with that joke. Anyway, keep
but
going.
you know, obviously they turned to Bo. And I was fine with that, honestly. I personally think that I personally like Din as more the lone wolf and cub, just sheriff going around. Let Bo-Katan handle that. Hopefully, it doesn't go wrong again. She's learned her lesson this time. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's.
I'll say that it's really my favorite thing of the series so far. I mean, I don't know. That's a pretty strong statement. I'm gonna think about that. It may be Bo-Katan's arc in this season. Definitely my favorite part of this season, very easily. Just especially so, and also just say, having the Clone Wars resolve all of that. I mean, it's interesting. We got the Siege of Mandalore arc, and just seeing how much she was willing to fight for her people and cooperate with the Jedi, and go and take this risk of asking Anakin and Obi-Wan to help. And so, yeah, we already saw that part. Like The Last Jedi, challenging our notions of heroism and our expectations of what a hero is going to be. I really appreciate the way this season, with both the armor and Bo-Katan, subverted our expectations about them being villains and said, wait a minute, these people actually maybe have their people's best interest at heart. Maybe, I mean, with Bo-Katan, the power of being welcomed into a tradition, into a family, whether or not you agree with what that family believes, the power of being accepted at all. And then, I mean, we can quibble at what it means for Din, but the armor saying, Bo, you got to walk both worlds.
Yeah.
For her to stand up in that power, in that experience, the wealth of that experience, the depth of the tragedy she's experienced, to be able to say, yeah, we got to actually gather people together, work together. Again, I've talked about the Darksaber, but I really got goosebumps at that moment where, again, we can quibble about the story with the changer with the creature, and then Bo picks it up and whatever. But I mean, that's Din trying to get rid of the thing, first of all, but also saying it's a moment for her to say, I'm finally going to embrace this destiny. And we talk about Star Wars. There's still the forces there. There's still this mythic sense of people stepping into the archetype that they are meant to become. And even just, again, we see at the very beginning of the season how she's so far away from that. To see her be welcomed, dive into the water, see the mythosaur, be reclaiming, just moments before having such ludicrous doubt about, or thinking that it's ludicrous, given her upbringing, given everything she saw her sister try and do and fail, in part because of her fault. But to see her then go through that baptism and come back and reclaim and start to embody everything that the Mandalore is meant to be, as the embodiment of the Mandalorian people and the focal point of the Mandalorian people, and to embrace that's actually could be not a focus for tyranny but for unity. And so, I mean, I thought about this too. We think about what the legacy of her sister is, and we were hoping to get a mention of Satine, maybe Corky's coming back, but we got a more fundamental, more profound mention of what Satine was trying to be, is this locus of unity and gathering people together in a peaceable. I mean, obviously they're gonna have to take on the Empire, and they do in this episode, the end of the season. But I mean, the Kryze clan not resting on her laurels as just the heir, but having the experience of both gain and exile and loss, and being inspired and being supported by Din. I mean, I think there's something big about that too. About, here's someone who finally trusts them. I never ship You know me, I never ship. I'm kind of shipping a
Well, I do like that final moment where it's like Grogu's in the middle and it's like Mama, Papa.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Then,
Yeah. Can I just say two things?
Okay.
One, Matt, when you were talking and you said Corky, I fully heard Corgi. So I was like, what's?
I think I made.
Are we gonna have a Mandalorian Corgi? Sign me up for that, please.
I made some corgi. You know, coronation's coming up again.
Yeah. Exactly. And second, are we gonna do cold takes?
We can.
Sure.
We better.
Because I think there's no colder take this season than Bo-Katan is going to be the villain and the armorer is going to betray everybody in the finale. Like that was like internet brain, galaxy braining this thing, trying to like come up with a twist that wasn't really based in anything. You know,
the armor I'll give people.
Yeah.
He was a little serious. There were a lot of sus moments with her, I felt.
It was also based in a real skepticism about these cultish communities. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Cultish communities that stick to these rules that we don't understand.
But to betray them for the Empire, that was the part.
Yeah, the spy. There was no spy, guys.
Yeah.
There was no spy.
So
I don't think.
And Matthew, maybe you can talk to this more effectively than I had, because I heard people talking about this on another podcast, and they were saying that the spies is not a reference to spies as we think about it as James Bond, Jason Bourne, but it's like a biblical thing of Moses.
Who brought that up, Matthew, on this podcast?
Joel brought that one.
Joel brought that one. Okay,
yeah,
I heard it on another podcast, but I'm glad you guys covered it, because I'm like that. When I heard that, I'm like, that's got to be, those guys gotta get on that.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, good, because and so I wonder if that was a little bit of Favreau giving it to the audience a little bit, or Favreau and Filoni giving it to the audience a little bit, going like, you guys are trying to figure everything out. Some things you don't have to figure out. Some things just are. And you know, this storyline just is. The twist that's coming is that Moff Gideon has a base here. There's no traitor in this. There is no big reveal of I am your father. That doesn't always happen. That doesn't always have to happen. This really is just a party of Mandalorians going to Mandalore to reclaim their homeworld. There is that in and of itself is enough. We don't need to spice it up with you know, a Kaiser Soze moment.
I'll just say, when it comes to the armorer, I think again, Dominic, that kind of falls into the problem of that episode you don't like, where I feel like her already saying you could take off your helmet. I think we need just a few more moments with the armor, kind of noticing Bo-Katan's efforts and her genuineness, or at least her kind of her Mando ethics kind of showing, and then maybe the armor kind of being a bit more pointed of like, oh, maybe I was wrong on you, and maybe you can take off your helmet. Maybe that doesn't make you less of a Mando. And I think that's the thing that I kind of needed just a little bit more of the armorer's side. Not necessarily like giving up the helmet rule, but embracing people who don't want to wear their helmets all the time, but to go, you are not less of a Mando. You are as much Mando, even if you keep off your helmet.
Yeah. Which is where she reached in the end. That's where she is at the end of the season. But
she's a karaoke partner of a few words.
But yeah, again, and that's just, I mean, you're hitting on it again, Joel. I think is that if you play, if that part of the storyline, the tension storyline that I feel was lacking, if it's more present, then all of these other storylines have to react to it. And through their reaction, we gain more insight into the characters. And I think that strengthens their arcs and thus makes those moments later on where we're paying off the things that have been set up feel more impactful and stronger and resonate more with the audience.
Yeah, theoretically. I think someone mentioned this at the in the finale when Ragnar taking the creed. They don't mention the helmet rule. Like, apparently, like if you go back to the first episode, the helmet rule's there, but in the finale it's not. And obviously you see Axe Woves and and the other one, the wrestler actress whose name escapes me at the moment. I forgot her character's name.
Casca Reeves,
Yeah.
as
Casca
played
Reeves.
by Sasha Banks, aka Mercedes Fulton. I
Yeah.
can't remember what her last name is, but her
Vernado.
Vernado,
Ex
yeah.
Wolves and Casca Reeves are doing the thump, but they're not wearing their helmet, so it seems like the whole helmet rule is not that important anymore. Even though I kind of like to joke that the armor is now the Pope of the Mando. She's the Mando Pope. Where's her? She needs a big hat. She needs her big hat and her Mando Pope mobile. But I think that rule is not like I think I don't mind if like if the children of the Watch are like we'll be the Mando helmet people who don't take off their helmets, but people like Act Wolves, Costa Reeves, you don't want if you want to keep your helmets off, that doesn't make you less of a Mando. You follow the creed just as much as anyone else here, so we're all cool. We're cool.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a way of saying what I've said before. The situation's changed. The reason they've had this such strict rules. I mean, you want to go to the biblical story here. The reason with the spies, what the spies are doing, they're going out ahead of the people, and they're in the desert, in this exodus to the promised land. They're on the cusp of it. They're going ahead while they're going through the promised land. They have to have very strict rules about who not betraying people and who intermarrying, and they're going for 40 years. Those rules get replicated later on, but the situation changes when you're actually in the promised land. It's good on them. You have a choice to stick to your guns or adapt. I see them doing both. To me, it underlines that. I get, again, people maybe felt like they needed it more spelled out. That's fair too. Like in terms of viewing experience, we're saying for real, in terms of emotional viewing experience, it might. I can see why it might need to be spelled out, but I enjoy just thinking about things.
Well, also in terms of like the TSI episode, there's one thing I wish again was more expounded upon. Axe Wolves looks at Din and goes like, he didn't have a drop of Mando blood in his body. And I kind of wish again that was another thing in terms of conflict, both not just fighting, but in terms of like ideology, it's like I would have liked to see more of the explosion of like the royal bloodline Mandos, and then you got Din, who's like he was just a nobody, he was just Din nobody who just became a Mando because he got to put on the helmet and took the creed.
Well, and again, I go back to that to the episode where they go to rescue the kid. Even if they're not fighting each other, when they all sat around the campfire, I'm like, here we go. You don't have characters sit around a campfire if they're not going to talk about stuff. And then Din's like, everybody peace out to go eat your food on your own. I'm like, okay, so we're not getting that either. So you could have had some of it in there, and to pick up on some of those other threads could have been picked up later on. Maybe Paz and Axe could have had their scrap, not over the rules of checkers, but over what makes somebody truly a Mandalorian. And again, that makes Grogu stepping in and going no all the more impactful.
That's definitely that. But I do like Bo's arc overall. I think it was an interesting now she's the Mando Queen. I know some people thought Din was going to be that Mando King, and I never kind of honestly thought that. Honestly, that was more kind of my vibe.
Jon Snow, I get that.
Yeah.
I kind of thought it would happen, but I also thought Jon might be king. So
True. Yeah, that's true. I thought that too. But the way things shake out.
Jon Favreau, though, if he was,
wait a minute.
I can't wait for the day we see Tar Vizsla. He just takes off his helmet. It's just Jon Favreau. They're all Jon Favreau. It's the Jon Favreau bloodline of Star Wars, and it will continue on for the future. It's Jon Favreau's way to eternally be in Star Wars. There must always be a Vizsla. There will always be a Favreau. In Star Wars.
I think Ragnar. If we see Ragnar like 30 years from now,
he'll be played by Jon Favreau.
Well, he'll be a little old too, but
it's a little known fact that Rio Durant in Solo is actually a foundling.
Oh yeah,
so he's part of foundling in the Favreau clan, or not the Favreau, the Vizsla clan.
Hogan.
So
Happy Hogan's Vizsla clan. There we go. Here's a question. Okay. This is just a complete tangent, but we're talking about films and everything. when do we think we actually see Tar Vizsla?
That's a good question. I would have said the Filoni movie, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't think so. I mean, it's always possible, but I mean, maybe that Thrawn's looking for some Tar Vizsla stuff, but I don't know.
Especially with the
I mean, it's
Darksaber
possi-
broken. I mean,
That's true. I mean, that's possible.
I'm gonna say we've seen all the Tar Vizsla we're ever gonna see.
that's probably true too.
I think I don't know. I feel like the story of Grogu, the Jedi Mandalorian, is very similar to the story of Tar Vizsla, the Jedi Mandalorian. So I feel like if we ever see it, it'll be a long time from now. But I think I think the struggles and the main beats of the story, I think, would be rather similar to what Grogu is going to go through. So
that's potentially true.
I see that as well. So before we get to the future, I want to just talk about one more thing about the show, which actually was probably the reason why I really like this season overall, despite my problems with the character and the story. The world building. I thought the world building this season was probably the best it's been in the first 2 seasons. Now, granted, I don't think that means the first 2 seasons had bad world building. I just think it just was such on a smaller scale that, it's like, here's Din, we're going to a town, we deal some stuff, and then we're going to come back. I really like a lot of the world building this season. See Coruscant, the New Republic, some stuff with the pirates, that sort of stuff. We obviously are seeing the Shadow Council, the various factions of the Empire. Obviously Thrawn's faction with the 7th Fleet insignia, and Hux's faction, which will become the First Order, and then I actually really like, by the way, and I guess we could talk about. I forgot we never really talked about Gideon. That's actually another criticism. I wish we had more Gideon this season. If I had another critique, I wish Gideon was in the season kind of a bit more. It's like he was in a lot more of season 2.
Do we think he's really dead?
Yes.
I hope. Do you think he's dead?
Yes.
I hope so. Right. I think so. Yes, I hope so. Control yourself, Mr. Favreau.
Well, only because we didn't get as much of him. If we want more of him.
But I actually was okay with Gideon, though, not being. I think to me, they did it perfectly. Where it's like Gideon's like, he's not the First Order. He's still technically his own warlord, but he's connected to the people who are going to be the First Order in Hux and that faction. So I really like that. But Dominic, what were your thoughts on just the world building this season overall?
I liked it. I agree with you. I think the first 2 seasons, were sort of a little bit cautious in their world building. It didn't stray too far. Here they brought us back to some familiar places like Coruscant and Mandalore, and Tatooine. But what we saw of Coruscant and Mandalore, it showed us different parts of it, different sides of it, and then it opens up larger questions about the galaxy and the world, the worlds that are inhabited. That Coruscant episode, just questioning everything about the New Republic, and what are they doing? Are they being as effective as they can be? I think that was that opens up some really interesting things. I hope get to be explored more. If that's all we get from them, maybe that's enough. But I feel like there's so much more potential there. And plus, Andor was so good to get basically an Andor episode within the Mandalorian was a nice treat. So
yeah, that's true.
That Coruscant episode is probably my favorite episode.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'll just jump in there. Yeah, it's so the character arcs with Bo-Katan coming to a place of resolution, and with Din and Grogu coming to a place of resolution. The world building. The Mandalorians have retaken Mandalore. We've also started to explore again, like we said, Coruscant and New Republic, and then finally getting to the New Republic story, really pushing for what happens next and transition into the future. I just something about resolutions that I enjoy more. I enjoy Return of the Jedi more than Empire Strikes Back, even though Empire Strikes Back is objectively a better film. I enjoy that better. I do. I mean, talking about Last Jedi versus Rise of Skywalker, I do. I mean, the thing about a second act is it actually brings things to a head that then can get resolved. Phase 2 of High Republic, bringing things to a head. So is a type of release in itself. and so the way this season really again got to everything that we've been hoping for, everything that it built up to, especially again with the Mandalorians. But we're gonna see again. I mean, I'm repeating myself, but more of the New Republic story. Is it a joke? Is it for real? To what extent? And that's the thing, is it's both and. Um, there's got to be some sort of organization, some sort of competence. Is it just Carson, Teva, and Leia Organa are the only ones who are actually competent? We know. Here's the thing: we know we have the shot of Mon Mothma in the Ahsoka trailer. It's a hologram. We don't know if we're actually going to go back to Coruscant. I do suspect. I know you guys maybe have been on Reddit. I'm not on Reddit, so I'm not going to go there. I suspect there's going to be a lot more to do with Coruscant specifically, and then Chandrila. And I mean, because we know, I mean, like, at least I hope what Chuck Wendig set up about the rotating capital. I hope that's true. Not necessarily just Coruscant, but galactic politics and New Republic politics, and the struggle. Mon Mothma, I remember in Life Debt, we're not just a rebellion, we're forming a government to actually form a government that can bring a genuine peace through unity, similar to Bo-Katan, and not the Empire. That it opens that up, and by opening also up the Shadow Council and what Thrawn is trying to bring back with the Empire, I mean, with Gideon as this bridge, right? A bridge to Thrawn in the sense of a what's it called? A midway point, temporary point. Of course, Gideon, everything to do with the cloning, and we know. Again, they didn't. I like that they didn't confirm it. I like that they didn't say this is this guy Palpatine over on Exegol trying to do his thing. But there's the hints. The hints are there.
Yeah.
There are people trying to develop some things that may or may not connect to Snoke and Palpatine, but could. So I love the way it pushes things. It just pushes the story forward in a way that isn't like that. Yeah, like you were saying with seasons 1 and 2, little cautious. There is a gratuitousness you can have to just holding back too much, and I love the way this just didn't hold back with that.
Yeah. I wonder, do you think you feel that way, Matthew, because of Book of Boba Fett, because of just how much that felt like another Mando season?
Yeah,
it kind of made it feel like, okay, we're keeping our watch instead of just going straight to Mando season 3. Then it's like maybe the pacing would have just felt better if you just kind of watch 1, 2, 3, kind of go straight.
Well, again, I thought the pacing was fine.
Okay,
especially because of Book of Boba Fett, because it actually adds more time. Now, again, for the problem with Book of Boba Fett was the first episodes of Book of Boba Fett were great about Boba Fett, and then we got replaced by this other story. But revisiting the Mando episodes, it draws out the pacing even more, and so
that's fair. In terms of the Shadow Council, I got the sense that maybe outside of Hux and maybe Thrawn, I don't know, it's up in the air. I'm kind of leaning towards no. I don't think any of them know that Palpatine's back, because Gideon's like, maybe we should consider new leadership, and then a lot of them's like, here, and then that one guy's like, get this blaster ready. He's like, oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to be the Emperor. Well, and obviously Gideon's got his whole cloning thing, so he's kind of got the delusions of grandeur going for him. So I think he wants to be Emperor.
And there's no way Thrawn wants Palpatine around.
Maybe. I don't know, but it seems that way. I mean, Hux might be. Hux is either working for Snoke right now, or Snoke has yet to appear before them. But I kind of get the sense that they didn't act like Palpatine was back. Like, they kind of acted like we're all kind of we all want the crown. We're just kind of working together because we hate the New Republic. But alliances on hatred are a fragile thing at best. Quotes one Darth Kraya. But yeah, overall, I think the world building was fantastic this season, really expanding the universe. And I think, really setting us up for the Ahsoka show, that I think is going to get us to the heart of this grander story. But one last point, the grander story itself, kind of season 4 of Mandalorian and beyond, the Mandoverse, the New Republic era, whatever we want to call it. There's a lot of debate about that. this I felt again, like you said, all this felt like a series finale. This felt very much like, yeah, Din can just rest up, relax, got his kid. I probably don't need more. I mean, we're gonna get more, obviously. Favreau says that she's already written season 4.
Well, the lone
No.
wolf and cub in the deal with Papa Toronto. So
Yeah, with Carson Teva, the independent contractor of the New Republic, as we all joke. I do kind of feel like, though, because of that, again, as Dominic mentioned, I feel like Favreau almost wrote himself out of the bigger, deeper Mando conflict hoo-ha stuff. I can go back to I want to go back to my thing of episodic adventures. Please get some more different writers, though, so they can, kind of give unique spins instead of just, here's another monster attack. There's a lot of monster attacks this season. A lot of episodes had a monster. Even the second to last episode, here's a monster for some reason. Like, what?
It's a random one, yeah.
Isn't it a mythosaur trying to get off? Or
no, that's not a mythosaur. That's something else.
Like take off the planet. I thought it was.
Yeah. Now that was something else. That looked like a crystal monster.
Okay.
So, in some ways, kind of writing himself out of like a bigger story that they set up for 2 seasons in a Book of Boba Fett for sure. But also, obviously, we're gonna start getting another bigger story with Thrawn coming. He's going after Imperial remnants. Those Imperial remnants are probably gonna start getting him closer and closer to some big happening. And obviously, I can only assume Ahsoka is probably gonna have it by the end. Thrawn's back, people. Don't get panic. Hit the panic button. Panic.
At the disco. No.
But yeah, Dominic, I'll throw it to you. I mean, we talked about this a little bit. The future, both of the show and the verse era, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see this era outside of the lens of Din Djarin and Boba Fett. I'm excited to see where these next 2 shows take us with Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew, because I think, for as much as those 2 guys get around the galaxy, there's still so much more to be explored, so much more to be seen. So I'm excited to see that. And then as it relates to Din and Grogu, there's still more to be told there. There's still more adventures to be had, and there's more for them to grow into. So that, the next season of Mandalorian will likely feel different because it's going to be focused. I think it's likely to be focused on other things rather than the larger Mandalorians storyline. But I think it's an exciting time. I think they did a good job of wrapping up this arc, and now it's on to the next thing and seeing what else these characters have to offer. And I think that's an exciting prospect.
I'll also add the thing I'm looking forward to, especially with Ahsoka, but also Skeleton Crew, is how do these Mandoverse New Republic era shows distinguish themselves despite being part of this somewhat connected storyline, especially because they're not going to be written by Jon Favreau. These will be Favreau-less stories. Right. And kind of the closest example we have, and even though it's not Mandoverse, is Kenobi, because it is a volume production. It was made in LA, so it's definitely got a lot of the same crew, but it wasn't written by Favreau. So tonally, it was very much not of the same, it's totally just not the same league as Mando. Like, I made this joke in my head. It's like, Peli Motto would not fit in the Kenobi show. After Kenobi got back, not Peli going, oh, my favorite Jedi. There's my favorite Jedi right there. Kenobi, Ben Kenobi, there you are. That was my favorite dude. That it can work in Mando because Mando's kind of that wackiness to have Peli Motto, who I love, by the way. I love Peli Motto, but that wouldn't have worked in Kenobi. So I think that's something I want to see. Just how do these 2 other Mandoverse spin-off shows really distinguish themselves in a way I don't think like Book of Boba Fett did, which again just feels like more Favreau Star Wars, but with Boba Fett.
I'll tell you how, and that this gets going to the future. We've raised this a few times already in this show. Is this podcast is I think Favreau is, Dom, I think you said this, is focused on the Din and Grogu, the small personal story. Filoni does tell the small personal story, but he has more energy and more interest, I think, in telling the larger scale story. He can tell the small and personal story with a character named Ahsoka Tano, and who always has these implications on the wider galaxy and what she means for the Force and the health of the Force and the legacy of the Jedi. I won't be surprised. I mean, I don't know what the production is like, but if season 4 is entirely Jon Favreau and not Dave Filoni at all, because like you said, Filoni is more invested in Ahsoka and more invested in his own film that he's going to direct, and also then the longer story of pushing this towards we saw everything with Thrawn and Pelion, but then of course with Hux and ultimately Snoke and the drive out to the unknown regions and everything. Again, Chuck Wendig has already described for us in paper the whatever the screen version of that is. I think Filoni has more of that in mind because he's up higher up at Lucasfilm and more tied in, and again more involved in larger stories. So I mean, Ahsoka, just by the subject matter, is going to be so different. I'm so excited for it. It's going to be probably a lot closer to Kenobi and the Acolyte because, hey, space wizards. But and from what we've heard, just going out there and everything, we'd hope to see all the wonderful weird Mortis stuff from Clone Wars and Rebels. Just the out there George Lucas stuff. I mean, George Lucas was able to tell both the small story and the big story, and so Filoni being the disciple. I that's the thing I'm most looking forward to. Again, is I love both. I love the small story and the big story. I love the smaller story when it comes to space wizards. So that's the thing. Grogu's still there, and Grogu's still taking on the legacy of Luke, and of course the Mandalorian identity in season 4. But yeah, I think that's another thing we're going to see. We're going to see Din and Grogu, their importance decrease because they're just two people, and they're not space. Well, Grogu's a space wizard, but I mean, Grogu maybe even become more important than Din. I mean, stand on his shoulders. I appreciate that going forward.
Yeah, but yeah, Mando season 3, what a ride! It's probably not my favorite season. I actually don't know where I would rank it. Either I'm ranking it at my least favorite or my second least favorite. I don't know if I like season 1 a lot. I think it's a stronger season, but I do have a lot of highs for season 3. But yeah, that's our discussion for tonight.
Right on. Good point to wrap things up. Thanks everyone for joining the comments. We had a pretty lively comment chat here. I appreciate that. Love to keep it going. Let us know what you thought of the conversation tonight. Thought of Mandalorian season 3. What you thought of High Republic phase 2, of everything we talked about in between. Comment below. The comment sections will stick around. They aren't going anywhere. Let us know on Twitter or Instagram at Ion Canon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. Of course, also on the Underworld Facebook page, on Underworld Twitter, Ion Canon Twitch, etc. Please do give this video a like and a share. Subscribe to the channel and all our other outlets if you haven't already. Dom, always a pleasure. You got an open door. Thanks for joining us, and then let us know where they can find you.
It was great fun as always. Make sure you're checking out the Star Wars Underworld podcast. Record every Thursday night at 9 p.m. No longer 9:30. It's 9 p.m. on the YouTube channel and all the places where you can stream things like Facebook and Twitter and Twitch. So check that out, and then it's in your podcast feeds pretty much immediately after we're done. So check all that out. And we did a whole bunch of Mandalorian talk, did a whole bunch of Bad Batch talk, did a whole bunch of Celebration talk, and again, I'm sure we'll have a whole bunch of Visions talk coming up as that drops in just a couple of days, and I'm very, very excited for it.
That's right. Right. And Joel, where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID2021, again, JID2021 on Twitter, or at the Ion Canon Pod, where I always post lots of little tweet threads and whatnot. This week, I decided to post a tweet thread of what I thought a Sith Empire of old should look like in canon.
Very, very interesting, very intriguing. You can find me on Twitter at NEUG45. Yeah, I'm posting a bit of Star Wars, but Star Trek, soccer, all the other things happening. Instagram, MNEG1138. Again, a lot of soccer photos, but again, I do what I do. If you want to get to know me, of course, at Ion Canon Pod, Twitter and Instagram. Share more stories on Instagram these days, but you get the occasional post in there. And of course, if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, all our episodes are well, will show up there very well. Tonight's episode will show up there momentarily, and all our back episodes are there as well. Next week, we are exploring the term expanded universe, and what that might mean in the Disney canon era. Should be a classic Ion Canon deep dive as we do. But until then, Joel, Dom, let's blow this thing and head home.